Hey guys, so I'm back in Europe and it's given me some time to, when not everyone's leaning on you and you're not fully 100% full gas running an NGO which has gotten quite large, then I can take some downtime to do some of the normal stuff. And I've been catching up on the political situation in England with the news, etc. And I don't give a lot of time for the news, and I don't give a lot of time for politics. But since I realised something today, I was watching someone talk. I can't remember which politician. Someone was talking about Brexit, and I noticed that the language he was saying, he wants to reconnect with the average working class person and understand their position when they're voting. But the language he was using, I realised, for instance, he was using terms like GDP, etc. And it dawned on me, and I know that most working class persons won't have a clue what he's saying. And at the same time, because we haven't gone through a lot of self and spiritual development in the West, most won't feel comfortable admitting that they don't know what on earth he's talking about. And it just comes back to that point of politics of who really understands it. When you've got thousands of pages of legislation, you've got all these bizarre laws, who understands politics? And how can the voter ever cast a vote on something when they don't understand it? How can their vote be irrelevant? I mean, no one understands this system. It's so unbearably complex and complicated. No one knows what's going on. And I just want to make it clear to everyone again that the only time we're ever going to see any change from politics is when we, as a collective, who are not involved in the elite, who are not going to the expensive private schools and becoming the 1% of the 1%, who are running the countries, who are sitting in positions of power, have an opportunity to elect a leader who stands against what is going on and tells the people this is too complex, doesn't work, and tells the people that we have all of these problems that we're facing on the planet, but there are shortcuts to deal with them, and they are very straightforward, regardless of all of the crazy laws and all of the irresponsible political correctness and the way the elite, the super elite, can hide behind human rights when they haven't provided human rights for most of the planet. Then we can get excited about a change from politics. You know, people fear and worry about overpopulation. But if you were to dismantle the wealthy families who are owning the banks, etc., then you can start using their misguided and misused wealth, which is used to create wars and expand empires, very clearly that's what it's used to do. And you can begin to educate those countries where large families are the norm. The more educated a person is, the less likely they are to have very large families. This is just a proven fact. We can start truly tackling all these problems that people worry about by going after the heads of our crony capitalist system, the head families. And until you find a politician doing that, don't waste your energy trying to understand it. And here's the thing, that if the politicians are not from the 1% of the 1%, they're just normal people. They can't know everything. So they don't understand the fractional reserve banking. They don't understand the different legislations. They're just trying to say the right thing. You hear it when they're speaking. You hear it when they're getting interviewed. They just try to move back to, just trying to do the right thing for the British people. They don't speak any sense. They don't say anything concrete. It's just a constant merry-go-round of nonsense. And the sooner we see that, the better. And then we don't invest any energy and hope into this terrible, terrible system that we live in. And here's the important thing to realise, that when we get a leader who says, right, let's give a try for true capitalism. There were so many young people out there demanding socialism, and you don't understand it, guys. You haven't took the time. You've jumped on the bandwagon and you've gone, yeah, socialism's the answer because then I get stuff for less work. And it doesn't work that way. Socialism's never worked on the planet, and not when it's implemented by the elite and the wealthy. It never ever has. Now, what you need is a leader who says, we're going to have 50 years as a test period or 100 years of true capitalism. There won't be any ridiculous health and safety laws that are just so tight and so harsh. There won't be such heavy tax from the government that the average working class person doesn't stand a chance of getting into business. We're going to relax all of that, which has been designed by these families who are desperate to see a true global socialist system. We're going to reduce all of these taxes, reduce it all to a level where the working class person stands a chance. And from there, they can start producing things with new guidelines that are in line with protecting the planet. So we can manufacture and produce products, and we are rewarded when we do so, especially if we do it without harming the planet unnecessarily. You put sanctions and bans on things. You open up the right to farm hemp so you can replace crude oil in plastic with hemp oil. All hemp oil plastic is biodegradable. That's why Victorian plastics barely exist anymore, because it rotted away. You put sanctions and such very simple steps. And then when a politician makes it clear to you, I'm going to do these simple things, this will help tackle the environmental problem. The misdistribution of wealth, clearly these elite families have been corrupted by the wealth for too long. We're going to surrender some of their wealth to the betterment of persons who are struggling for simple, basic amenities, and allow those families to live out their days in the comfort and the wealth that their ancestors have earned them by whatever shady means they've done it. However, we're going to sanction and ban them from investing in anything that has any relation to arms, any relation to fuel sources, any relation to food sources, because clearly they've used it and manipulated it to manipulate us. This would be a true leader. This would be a politician that matters. And otherwise, you're just listening to these people on the TV and on the news. They're just talking nonsense. Nobody can sit down and understand it because no one can take the time to read the laws. Even for a public group to start, you would need to organise lawyers, you would need to organise people who are experts in legislation, and you'd need to create your own parliament to make any sense of what they're doing. But a real leader could simplify it so much and say, I'm in control and I speak for the people. And this is not happening anymore. I'm not letting the general public just be scraps at the elite's table to be fought over. I'm going to give them their power back and take away the power of the elite. I'm going to make the centre of London part of UK law. The centre of London, where the financial institutions are based, are not part of the United Kingdom. They're not governed by the United Kingdom's laws. So even if you want to do anything legally to prosecute them, you can't. You physically cannot. What happened in Iceland, where they prosecuted the bankers, can't happen in England, because the banks are operating inside its own sovereign state, which is the Crown of London. The Crown is the centre of London, and it's private. It's got nothing to do with the United Kingdom. And when we sign our birth certificates, we say that we are birthed to the Crown of London's country, same as you birth a ship in a dock. And until a leader stands up and says, look, you've been tricked by this system, and this is what's going on, then they're not worth listening to. They're just not. And they may not even understand it fully. Truly, they may not. Because if you just keep getting them to read from a book, how are they ever going to discover the truth of things? You better believe the elite who own the publishing houses don't print books. Not many. There's not many books in the world printed that tell you how it's set up, that tell you that the Crown of London, the core of London, is not governed by a UK police force because it has its own courts. Which means even if the government of England said what those banks have done is wrong, we need to take them to court, you won't know what goes on because it's a private court. It's got nothing to do with UK jurisdiction. And a true politician, a true leader will speak of these things. And until they do, it's all just unbelievably twisted, gargantuan maze of nonsense. How is anyone ever supposed to make sense of it, truly? Even the average working class person who is casting a vote doesn't even understand the terminology. Let's teach our children politics from birth. If it's going to be such a key component of the society we live in, let's start that early, like we do mathematics and English. Why not? It's absolutely key and imperative. Everything has a political foundation in our modern day life, but we don't do it. And it's made so hyper complex that these morons that are in charge of it have just took it too far now. And it's time to pull it away and make it simple. And it can be done. But it requires people power. And knowledge is the source of power. Knowledge is where the power lay. But simplicity makes the acquisition of knowledge much, much easier. And this is what we need to start doing. Now, the problem we then have, which is why I teach my spiritual, I'll point to, I don't teach meditation, but I show with esoterics why it's an absolute necessity that you find inner peace and through meditation, is that until you find inner tranquility, you won't sit down and read these things and research them and learn them because it's too boring or it leaves you with your thoughts. Many people, when we're left with their thoughts, are so out of union with their self and reality that they begin feeling negative and depressed. So they need something to stop them being alone with themselves. They need TV or movies, etc. So number one key component is find tranquility within yourself. Whereas when you sit peacefully and quietly, you don't start raising doubts and problems because that's your own flawed perceptions that need working on. The victim mentality, etc., are flawed perceptions of your mind that need changing in meditation. And until you do that, you're not going to find the strength because you're not going to be tranquil and peaceful enough to read and understand what is going on. So, key component number one, go within ourselves, meditate and find union within our own bodies and minds so as we can find tranquility to understand these systems that we live in. Number two, start looking at ways collectively, once we are that way, just as the elite understand how to be tranquil, so they are one step ahead of us all. Start finding among ourselves in groups how we can start approaching the system that is and start changing it. And number three, hope and pray that one day we get a chance to elect a leader who's going to bring down the house of cards.
That we will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another packers like to keep us trapped in greed, with all the green belts wrapped around our minds and endless red tape to keep the truth confined.